Welcome to Kensington Church. I'm really glad that you're here for today's service. I'm Sam Frangione, our arts director at the Orion campus, and although you'll never find me sipping a pumpkin spice latte and Uggs, I'm more of a salted caramel cream cold brew kind of guy. There are lots of things I do love about fall. I'm a fan of pumpkin patches, cider mills, Friday night lights, and the relaunching of many things happening around Kensington. I have two exciting fall happenings coming at you. Consider this your personal invitation. First is Man Camp. I've attended Kensington's Men Retreat for 3 years now, and trust me, this is something that you want to prioritize. Man Camp is for every man in every walk of life. That means you. You are invited, and you should come for so many reasons. Ziplining, sports, fishing, kayaking, eating, great music, breakout sessions, and more. We're calling it Man Camp because we've been thinking about how a base camp is a place of preparation for a great trek or exploration ahead. It's a place to be inspired, challenged, and reminded that the journey we're on isn't one that we're on alone, but that God is with us and that we have a brotherhood of men walking alongside us too. In years past, we've seen that a single weekend is long enough for monumental decisions to be made, friendships to be built, and legacies to be transformed. So don't miss it. Join us at Spring Hill Camps October 8th to the 10th. Info and registration at kensingtonchurch.org/mancamp. Hope to see you there. The second invitation is for parents, particularly parents of little ones. We have 2 kids at home, and when you get the chance to take in some helpful content, you take it, especially when it's free. We have a free online faith and the family event happening tonight called Raising Littles. You've probably heard the saying that the years are short and that the days are long with young children. I can definitely vouch that the days are long. But perspective is important. These long days often can leave us exhausted and wondering how we could possibly create meaningful moments to teach them about Jesus. Please join us tonight for a time of encouragement as we align ourselves with God and make room for Him to speak into these chaotic days. This event is hosted by our very own Taylor Leal, our early childhood director at the Troy campus, with guest panelists who will share practical ways to bring Jesus into our parenting and to intentionally train little hearts. Register now at kensingtonchurch.org/faith and family. Let's return now to our service. I believe God has something in store for each one of us. We're in the 3rd week of our I Feel series and focusing on feeling conflicted. That's a feeling that I can definitely identify with. That internal wrestling and sometimes even indecision. Let's lean in and see what God has for us today. Thanks for being here. Well, good morning, everyone. Morning. If you were wondering, yes, that was me on the screen. Today, we are in the 3rd week of our I Feel series, and we're talking about I Feel Conflicted. I've spent way too much time in the last 24 hours thinking about this moment and how I was going to get out of the video of myself to the person of myself. And I still feel conflicted about it. But I wanted to share, my name is Sam Frangione, by the way. I'm on our staff here at our Orion campus, and we're really glad that you guys decided to join us today. I wanted to start, I really don't think there's a better way we could start our day than looking at the scriptures and just spending time this morning thinking, pondering, and I felt like Proverbs 3, verse 5, it's very well known, but I just think that there's nothing better to recenter us today. As we enter in, it just says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. I think it's a good reminder for us to know that we don't need to lean on our understanding because we can understand only so much, but to lean on, not our own, but to lean on His this morning. Amen. Amen. So I'm not going to rehash everything I also just said in the video, but we have Man Camp coming up in just a couple weeks. So I'm getting to be a part of the team that's planning that right now. And if you've been to Man Up before, if someone you know has been to Man Up before, it's similar but a little different. But we are going to be harping on all of the same things, coming around the same truth that God has designed us and what He has for us as men in our lives and what He calls us to. And we're going to have a blast, but that is what's happening October 8th through the 10th, and you can sign up at kensingtonchurch.org/mancamp. Bonus note for you, I'm going to talk about our Raising Littles event that we have tonight online. So if you have kids who are little, however, whatever you describe that as, I would say, I don't know. I have a 6-month-old and a 3.5-year-old at home. The 3.5-year-old, the bonus note is that she was running around my feet all during that video and the video shoot. And I was like, you can kind of see, if you go back and watch later, you can see that I was like laughing half the time. It's because she was bothering She was bothering the living daylights out of me. That's what she was doing. But she was eating chicken McNuggets, had some barbecue sauce. I didn't have ketchup, but we had barbecue sauce. So that was an issue for us that day. But we have that tonight. You have to go to the link, Faith and Family, and then you get a registration link and the team's link to be able to be a part of that. So go ahead if you want to do that tonight. It's at 8 p.m. We'd love to see you there. It'll be a lot of fun and also really helpful if you're in that parenting stage or know somebody that is. And the last thing I want to share with you is that in about a month, if you have middle school or high school students or are a middle schooler or high schooler, we have our Wild Retreat. It is an awesome time. I've been able to be a part of that for the last 5 or 6 years, and it is amazing every single time. So if you have a student or are a student, make sure that you are there. So you can sign up there at kensingtonchurch.org/wild. With that being said, we have an awesome day. Craig is going to be teaching us, walking us through this idea of feeling conflicted and coming to a lot of crossroad moments in our life as we look at the life of David. So go ahead, stand up where you're at and ask somebody next to you what your favorite thing about the fall is, and then we'll continue with our day.
Good morning, Orion. Good morning. So what are you most excited about with fall? On three, 1, 2, 3. Ain't nobody said deer hunting? Seriously? Wow. Friday, bow season opens up. No one? Okay. I'm just leaving. You need another pass. So a couple things I want to let you know about before we let our band take us into the rest of the morning. 2 really great opportunities for us. One very local to us as a campus, and one that is for us as an entire church with all of our campuses leaping into. The first one I want to talk about is one that I've already sent out a number of emails on. Hopefully you got those. If you didn't, that just means that you're not on our email list, so let us know and we can get you on that. One of the things that we have been really trying to figure out coming out of, I guess you shouldn't say coming out of COVID, still wrestling with the effects of it and where we're at and all of that, is the implications of what that means for us as a community and how to serve this community, but how to serve outside of our walls as well, how to serve our kind of Lake Orion and greater surrounding region. And so all of that's led us to really believing that we need to develop the space that we have right here at our campus a little bit differently. So that's going to involve 2 projects that we are stepping very quickly into in the next few weeks, one of which is an internal project that you'll see starting to take place second to the first one, which will happen throughout the winter. But that's going to be a kids space, kind of a region over in this side of the building. If you could think cafe over here, come up the stairs, turn right. Probably in that area, we're looking at really developing a space that says to our young families as they walk in the door, we see you, we value you, and we want a space for your kids. When my wife and I, when our kids were a little bit younger, one of the things that's always hard on a Sunday morning is as you're trying to connect as mom and dad, you got kids pulling on your leg. Let's go. Do we have to stay? How much longer are we going to be here? And the church that I came from, we had this really great kids area. And so it gave them a spot to be them and to have their community and let us connect with other moms and dads and develop more relationships. So that's one of the projects that we're underway and planning. But the other is, and I'm equally excited about, is a green space that we're going to be converting our north lot into. So our north parking lot, if you have not noticed around our Orion campus, is like everything else here. It is just a sea of asphalt. And it really limits us in doing some things outdoors that we would love to do. Not just with us as a community, but really extending the opportunity to our neighbors, the city that we're in. As a matter of fact, we have even already contacted the Lake Orion High School, and there is preliminary talk about them doing band rehearsal, maybe doing other events here with the school district, an opportunity for us to extend even to House of Hope that we have a partnership with, to give them green space to hang out on. So I want you to picture this. Next Christmas, being able to stand out together in that now parking lot turned into green space with a 50-foot tree in the center of it gathered around it as we light that thing up to start the season. Or imagine this even sooner. This next summer, being able to gather outside for a variety of events, from students to us getting together around a campfire pit, pergolas, swings that we're gonna put out there, like just having a space where as a community, we can get outside of our building and be with each other. Like right now, we're doing, as you walked in, you saw it, right? We're doing party in the hallway. It's great, but imagine we could do party with grass outside. Well, I shouldn't say party with grass. I'm gonna say it different. That's a different party. That's not the party we're doing. Party on the grass is what we're gonna do. But imagine being able to have that space for us. So here's what I just wanna invite you to. After the service today, we're gonna open up for you to come over there, hear more, ask questions, and to really dream about what it looks like for us to partner together in making this a reality. So that's our campus-based opportunity. Here is our more church-wide opportunity. You might remember that a number of weeks ago we came to you as everything was starting to rapidly dissolve in Afghanistan, and presented an opportunity through our partnership. We have a global partner in Afghanistan to be able to get families out of there. And we asked you to contribute financially to that. And as usual, you were unbelievable. Across all of our campuses, there was just generosity on top of generosity. And the stories of men and women and families that have been gotten out of Afghanistan and relocated in other regions it's literally heartbreaking. It's amazing. It's incredible. There are families that did not make it, but there are families that did because of your generosity. When all of that was happening, my wife and I, Nicole, were sitting at the table with our kids one day having dinner, and one of the things that I started thinking was, wouldn't it be cool if we could have more personal physical skin in the game on this? Like, there's families out there that I would love if there was an opportunity to meet them, to help them, to navigate them through this season of absolute disruption and chaos in their lives. And for me, I think part of that is birthed out of, it's a whole nother story that maybe I'll tell another time, but there was a season of life where my dad spent some time in jail, and I remember how disruptive that was for us as a family. And there was a family in our church that came alongside us and really walked us through that with some needs that we had financially, with food, and just with emotional support as we were trying to figure out how to go through a season like that. And I think even back then, I realized I want to be that for someone else. So as all of what we were doing to help support getting people out of Afghanistan was taking place, there was a part of my heart that's like, I would love to make it more personable. Like, how do I help meet some of these families? So here's what's so amazing. We have an organization here, a part of Kensington, called Move Out. And if you're not new to Kensington, Move Out is basically our effort to make sure that we don't believe that church is just something you come and sit in. It is the community of God's people, and part of what the community of God's people should do and be are those who get outside of our walls, move out, and serve the community. Like, put the tangible love of Jesus into physical form and not just talk about it. So our Move Out group, run by Becky Lee, has partnered up with an organization called Samaritas. So Samaritas, their whole effort is refugee resettlement. And they're specifically working with a large amount of the refugees that are coming directly from Afghanistan right now, not just to our country in general, but right here to our very own region, and trying to help them get resettled. And so we've decided to partner up and create a new Move Out team with Samaritas. And a number of reasons that we picked Samaritas to partner with, but one of which is this is an organization that's working in what they're doing. As of right now, their statistics are 75% of the people that they partner with to help are self-sufficient and on their own within 180 days, which is just an incredible reality. It means that they're not just giving them a moment of need, but they're really helping walk them through a process of taking what is a horrific season of chaos and turmoil and reestablish into a new future. So here's our opportunity as a community, is to come alongside this organization by taking on one family for a 6-month commitment to literally be a community guide. And that could entail a number of different things, from helping a family figure out where the grocery stores are at, to where the schools are at, to fill out paperwork, to all kinds of things. And so there's a list of ways that we can partner, but here's what I'd love to do. Instead of rolling through all the list of ways that we could partner with these families, is invite you to come on October 5th from 7 to 8 to hear more about what this looks like, what the commitment would be, how to get involved, where to get involved, when to get involved, all that you're gonna need to know about this. It's all gonna be online. It's gonna be a Zoom meeting, so that makes it a lot more convenient to be able to do whenever and wherever you're at that point. But here's what I would just say. The church has a history of being called by Jesus to be people who are compassionate to those who are being disrupted. To even be compassionate and to seek how it is we can serve those who are moving into our land. This is an incredibly unique moment in history for us as a church to be something that the church has long been called to be. And I believe that just what I know of our community, that this is who we are. People that don't believe Jesus is just somebody that we worship on a Sunday, but we worship Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and not just for the benefit of our own lives, but for the benefit of others. So I want to encourage you. If your heart leapt at the opportunity to help get men and women and families out of that country, then may your heart leap at the opportunity to navigate them through ours, through not just our country, but our very backyard and neighborhoods. And that's where we're going to start. So we're going to do a song right now called Light. And one of the things that this morning I was thinking about, even listening to the song, is that when we sing about Jesus being the light of the world, one of the clearest ways that we show that to be true is where we let the way his light has impacted our lives turn into love in our hands as we serve our neighbors. Let's be that kind of a church.
Morning, everybody. You're welcome to stand with us if you'd like to worship. You have a way of making disappointment, making it an anthem of hope. You have a way of opening a promise, even when this door is still closed. It's what you do, it's who you are. You are like a wildfire in the dark. It's how you move, 'cause it's your work. You can change the whole thing with one word. Light, let there be light. Open my eyes, let there be light. You have a way of coming with a breakthrough, even when I've run out of time. You are the hero coming to my rescue, moving at the speed of light. Let there be light. Open my eyes. Let there be light. Let there be light. Open my eyes. Let there be light. It's what you do, it's who you are. You are like a wildfire in the dark. It's how you move, 'cause it's your heart. You are like a million burning stars. It's what you do, it's who you are. You are like a wildfire in the dark. It's how you move, 'cause it's your heart. You are like a million burning stars. Light, let there be light. Open my eyes. promises. Time and time again, you have proven you'll do just what you said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. God, from age to age, though the earth may pass away, your word remains the same. Oh, your history can prove there's nothing you can do. You're faithful and true. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Oh, your faithfulness. Oh, you are the same all the time. You never leave us. I'll put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. Oh, I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope and firm foundation. He'll never let me down. He'll never let me down. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
Awesome. Hey, would you actually stay up for a minute? If I can ask you to do that, I'd love it. We started this series 3 weeks ago called I Feel. The reason we started this series is because God has designed us with an incredible ability to feel. And can you imagine if God would have made us without the ability to feel? Some of you are like, I actually know that person. But like, can you imagine if we had no capacity to feel? God gave us this ability when he designed us to not just feel, but to feel for a variety of things and to feel at an unbelievable depth. And I think that's the reason why at times our feelings also have the ability to lead us instead of us lead them. So one of the things that we have been trying to do throughout the course of this series is ask, what do we do in the moments that the feels are so deep that they threaten to tell us what to do instead of us tell them what to do? We've been looking at the life of David in the Bible and several moments where this guy who is described as a man after God's own heart, like what did he do, this man after God's own heart, in moments where he felt deeply to be able to control his feelings instead of the reverse? That's why week 1 we looked at moments where he felt overlooked and unseen, and last week moments of being anxious. Today we're going to look at a moment in the life of David where there's this internal conflict. Those moments in life where the things that we have come to believe about God, the substance of our faith, the things that we even sing about, seem to not be in agreement with the circumstances of our life, where there's this disagreement between what we sing and what we're experiencing that put us at sort of crossroads, where we have to decide in those moments, where do I really place my faith? Where do I really put my hope and my trust? That's why I love this song. That's why I wanted you to stand for a minute. I want to put the lyrics back up because I think in many ways, this is a song that represents some of that conflict, those moments of internal conflict that put us at a decision point. Here's what I mean. If you look back at the lyrics, it says, you're the God of covenant and faithful promises. Here's what I'd love to do. Would you humor me with this? Would you sing this with me? Because this is what we do, right? You just sang it. Some of you sang it. If you didn't sing it and you don't like singing, that's fine. And you're like, oh man, there's no band behind us? They're going to stay low. I got a mic. You're going to hear me. I'm a horrible singer. My voice may even crack like I'm going through puberty again. So I'm going to do that for you so you can help me out and just sing. Where's Jocelyn? Actually, I'm gonna have her help us. You set the pace. So here it is. We just sang it, right? So you're the God of covenant, faithful promises. You'll do just what you said. Let's sing it now. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to me. Gone. From the rising sun to the setting same, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me. Here's the conflict. We sing, great is your faithfulness. And those words that God is a covenant and faithful promise-keeping God, that he'll do just what he said, that he is faithful to us, all of that can be substantiated here. Those are true statements about who God is. But here's the reality. If you have walked with Jesus any length of time, then you, like me, you have had moments, you've had experiences, you have had circumstances in your life that don't feel like God is being very faithful. Moments that would attempt to tell you something very different. Moments that would tell you that in fact God is not faithful to you. That he doesn't care about you, he has left you, he has abandoned you, he's given up on you. Sum it all up. That he is not a faithful God. Those are those moments where we find the things that we believe come in conflict with what we're experiencing. So the question is, what do we do in those moments? What do we decide? That's why I love this song. Because in the lyrics is a moment of decision at these crossroads. Here's the decision that they sing about in this song. The decision is when you're at this crossroad moment, let's put the next lyric up, we believe this: I put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground. So when my circumstances say one thing, and they would disagree with what I've come to believe to be true about the nature of who God is, here's what I will decide to do. I will put my faith in Jesus, my anchor to the ground, my hope, and my firm foundation. There's one version of the song where they actually go on and they sing even further. They say, so I will bless you in the middle of the storm, in the middle of my trial, in the middle of the road, when I don't know where to go, I will still bless you. So that's what we're going to do today, is look at a moment in the life of David when he found himself at this conflict between what he came to believe to be true about God, even something that God said to him, and yet his circumstances seemed to disagree very much with what it was he had come to believe about God. So let me pray and ask that God would be very present to us, and then we're going to jump into the text. Father in heaven, I acknowledge that you are the covenant-keeping God, that you are faithful to your promises, to yourself, to us, to your words. And yet we just know that times, maybe even for many of us right now, moments in our life tell us something very different and put us at a sort of crossroads where we really do have to decide. It's not a religious idea, it is a reality. We have to decide where and in whom do we truly place our trust, our hope, and our faith. And so God, I pray to you that you would be present to us, that we would hear your voice this morning, that you would literally somehow tune our ears into your voice, tune our hearts into your presence. Meet us in all of the complexity of faith and doubt and skepticism and anger and hurt and joy and all of it that comes together and what it means to believe that there is a God, that his name is Jesus, and that he made all things. Would you meet us in the complexity of what it means to try to love you, follow you, understand you, and know what it is you're saying to us in the midst of anything and everything we go through in this life. Thank you that I can be confident, as we all can be, that this word will speak to us because you gave it to us. In Jesus' name, amen. So one of the things that's important for us always at this point in the morning to do is just always to acknowledge those of you that are a part of making Kensington happen on a regular basis, through your giving and through your financial support. So when I talked about a minute ago, the fact that we already had a global partner in Afghanistan, that's because of you and your generosity to really believe that our faith is not just about sitting in a room on a Sunday morning. And so the fact that you continually trust us with the application of what you give is both humbling and inspiring. So if you're not a part of that, we'd love to invite you to join us. I think using a portion of your money to serve the world around us, locally, globally, in the name of Jesus, I think there's nothing better to do with a portion of what God's given us. Here's all the ways that you can do it if you want to do it online. If you're like, I don't like doing things online, I don't trust my phone, that's fine. We've got receptacles you can give in the back as you walk out. Would just invite you to do that and appreciate you for doing it. So I had a story I wanted to share, and I shared it with First Service, and I'm going to do it again, and I'll tell you what I told them is that I actually hesitated a little bit during the week because sometimes I'll share stories about my life, but I don't like to share stories that almost make it look like, in a sense, like I'm the hero, like I made the right decision. But this is a story that's so, for me, it's so close to what we're going to talk about today. Like it was one of these moments for me at a crossroad where I really had to fight for what I was going to believe, that I figured I would share it anyways. So here it is. The short version is, when I went to school after high school, when I went off to college, my original direction, I've shared this before, so some of you would know this, was not to be a pastor. Matter of fact, I remember even in the church I grew up in, this guy was like, hey, you should consider being a pastor. It's like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. And so my pursuit was I wanted to be a police officer. My brother-in-law was a police officer in Southfield, and I wanted to kind of follow him, and he was gonna help navigate those doors to get me into the cadet program. The school I was going to was gonna have a law program the next year, and so that was it. That was my course. And over a series of events, more details I won't get into this morning, I really feel like God changed all of that. And had a moment where I feel like he spoke to me. And when I say speak to me, I hope you always know this, it's not like an audible thing. It's more really just put an impression in my heart. Sometimes that's how he speaks to me. Often it's through this book. Sometimes it's even through other people. But I had a moment where they kind of all came together. And I just really feel like God said, hey, that police officer thing, that's your idea. It's not mine. I have a different direction for you. And so I completely changed course, ended up realizing that what God wanted me to do was exactly what I said I never wanted to do, which was to step into the church world and work there. And so I thought for the longest time I was going to be a youth pastor and worked with our high school and junior high and college group. And I worked for an incredible church until it wasn't. Unfortunately, again, more details we won't go into right now, but the guy who led that church really at one point began to believe that this stage was more about his popularity than his service, and really believed that it was about him. And he just began to take the whole thing in the wrong direction and made it all about who he was and his identity and his popularity, and the whole thing just began to dismantle overnight. And people that liked him kind of took his side, and people that thought he was leading wrong weren't on his side. It was nasty. And I remember going through all of that, and I was like, man, this should be like an episode of like Church Gone Wild. This is awful. But I do remember thinking, I'm done. Like, this is insane. I will love Jesus for the rest of my life. I will serve him for the rest of my life, but I will not work in a church world. This is crazy. And so I went to this conference. I don't know if you've ever done this, where you've kind of told God, if you, then I, or if you don't, then I. So I go to this conference, and I literally remember telling God, if you don't change my mind, I'm going to come home and I'm going to quit. Like, I'll construction or do the police officer thing. I'll figure something else out, but I won't work here anymore unless you speak. And so I had this moment, this one night, they were singing this song, the band was, and I can't even remember the name of the song. Actually, I remember I didn't like it. It was a weird song. It was about a bird flying or something. I remember thinking like bird flying. I was like, I'll get that bird. And so they're singing this song about a bird flying. And I'm like kind of in the back of the room like, hey, this is a really dumb song. And I just felt like there was this moment God spoke. And I felt like what he said to me was exactly what I needed to hear. He said, listen, I know, this is just kind of impression. I know you feel like you're a grounded bird whose wings have been clipped. You will fly again, so stay your post. So I go back, I double down, I decided, all right, I gotta do this. But in all of this, I've got all this conflict, right? Where I felt like I was gonna go police officer and God said, no, do this. So I did it, but then it turns out to be a horrible experience. And I'm like, wait a minute, am I supposed to be doing this? And then I feel like as it falls apart, I'm gonna be done. And then I feel like God says, no, you're gonna stay at it in this place you don't even wanna be. Conflict again. So then a year later, I get an opportunity to fly out to McKinney, Texas. My wife and I didn't have any kids yet. And they offered us, there was this church out there, a brand new church, a couple years old, growing like a wildfire, super exciting. And so they made us an offer. They're like, hey, we want you to come out, run our whole program with the student ministry. So, I mean, we just were like, this is the time of life to move. No kids, no anything, let's do it. We're out of here. So I said yes, flew back home, got off the plane, immediately felt just like way back when God said, not the police officer thing this way. I felt like he went, hey, McKinney's your idea, not mine. That's not what I told you to do. Like, again, conflict. Because I'm like, wait, I thought I stayed where you wanted me to be, and then this is the answer. This is the gift. This is the blessing, because now I get to go to this incredible thing. And I just felt very clearly he said no. So I had to call him back up. I had to say, no, I'm not going. Again, conflict, even conflict at home. My wife's like, you're nuts. You're not hearing God right. We need to go. And it was just this whole moment where we had to navigate together and figure out what God was doing. And I had this whole experience where over time, I felt like at multiple crossroad moments where I felt like God had said something, but my experience was telling me to do something different. I could have gone entirely the wrong way. At one point, out of just pain, instead of running to God with it, running away from it. At one point, out of frustration and hurt at what I saw happening in the church. At one point, frankly, out of the lure of the bigger and the better in another state where I could have moved to and just gotten away from the frustration of where I was at. But here's what I clung to, is that throughout all of that and for all of the frustration, I genuinely pushed myself to continue to believe that the words of the resurrected Jesus, when he said in Jeremiah 29:11, I have plans for your life, were actually true. And if I would turn my ear to his voice, instead of trying to turn his voice to me and let him do what I wanted, then I would know the path he had for me. But I had to listen to him instead of trying to get him to do what I wanted. But what do we do when we are in moments like that? Because that's not my only moment. And some of you are in a moment like this right now where there's a thing that you feel like God told you he was gonna do for you. Maybe it was just an impression he put on you. Maybe it was something you read in the Bible once. Maybe it was a service you went to and you just got inspired that God was gonna do this thing. Maybe it was something somebody else told you God was gonna do. Maybe it involved, maybe this is a relationship. Maybe it was about a marriage. Maybe it was about a child. Maybe it was about a career. Maybe it was about a dream you had. But what do you do when you have this thing and you're certain God once told you it was gonna happen, he was gonna do it, just trust me, and all of a sudden your circumstances around the thing begin to tell you the opposite, that in fact God is not faithful, but he is unfaithful. Because that's exactly the part of David's story I wanna step back into today. So if you have a Bible, we're gonna be in a place called 1 Samuel. So 1 Samuel is pretty early on in the Bible. You don't have to flip too many pages. If you're still trying to learn how to navigate this thing, we put all the verses on screen for that reason. So 1 Samuel chapter 24 is where we're gonna be, verse 1. It says this, after Saul had returned from pursuing the Philistines, he was told, David is in the desert of En-Gedi. And so Saul took 3,000 young, able men from Israel and set out to look for David and his men near the crags of the wild goats. So 3,000 men, if the numbers we understand to be true of what David had for his men, that means that in comparison, it was about 5-1 in Saul's favor. So Saul comes out with 3,000 men to hunt David down. Verse 3, he came to the sheep pens along the way, and a cave was there. And Saul went in to relieve himself, and David and his men were far back in the cave. So that phrase, as if it's not clear enough, when it says he came in to relieve himself, literally means to cover his feet. So covers, not like you need the visual, right? But you get, there's no questioning the posture that Saul's in this moment. He's popping a squat in the cave in a moment of privacy. So let's leave him in a moment of privacy to do his business, and let me walk you through a quick kind of history that gets us to this point. 25 years earlier, Israel appoints their first king. That's Saul, who's in the cave right now. Saul begins strong, but he doesn't end that way. At one point, he begins to think incrementally, small step at a time, that his ways are better than God's ways, and continues to deviate. Those steps become larger and larger over time. So finally, God renounces him as king and says, we need a new king. He comes to Samuel, the prophet, and he says, here's the person I want you to pick from this family line. So he shows up. This is week 1 if you've been in the series. And he begins to go through the line of these young men, the sons, and no to this one, and no to this one. And then finally the yes lands on the youngest of the sons who had been out tending sheep. His name is David. At 15 years old then, Samuel looks at David and says, you will be the next king. Now Saul's still king at this point. But David at that point is told, you will be the next king by Samuel, who, speaking on God's behalf, he is a kingmaker. This is what he does on behalf of God. So this is a huge moment. And you would think as a result of it, everything should change for David's life, but it didn't. There's no immediate sending him off to a prestigious school, no training in the ways of warfare, economy, and economics, or even the Torah. There's no mentorship with Saul. There's no plans of succession that are drawn up. So you can almost imagine, even initially, you're a 15-year-old boy that's just yanked out of your job and told, you're going to be the next king of this whole nation. And then all of a sudden, you're just back to doing everything as normal. There's got to be some conflict he's feeling, was that old guy right? Did he even know what he was talking about? But it is David who still, while a teenager, a few years later, ends up taking on number one enemy of Israel, Goliath, and he slays Goliath. And so what begins to happen at that moment is that Israel falls in love with David. They just love the guy to death. He starts to win a series of small battles for them. And so suddenly they're praising him. They're so, literally from the rooftops, they're crying out his name. There's parades in his honor. Saul is king, but David is their warrior. And so David, because of slaying Goliath, initially Saul's like, my man. But very quickly, when he realizes everybody likes him more than me, Saul begins to hate David. And so there's no mentorship partnership created between them. Saul doesn't come alongside David and go, hey, let me bring you under my wing, next king. Let me show you the ways of being a king. Instead, he turns David into public enemy number one. And so for the next number of years, somewhere maybe around 10 years, David not only is not appointed king, he's hunted down. And Saul's threat to him is, when I find you, I'm going to kill you. Now, along the way, there's a series of moments where people begin to pledge their allegiance to David. Whole community of people that want to see David king and no longer Saul. And among those people is a group of warriors. And not like farmers with pitchforks. David finds himself running with an elite group of very fierce fighters, always posed and ready. And so here's one place in the Bible in Psalms that David wrote, 57, he actually gives a description. So I want you to picture, these are the men that he's in the back of this cave with. I am in the midst of lions. I am forced to dwell among ravenous beasts, men whose teeth are spears and arrows, whose tongues are sharp swords. So this is the group that David's with. These are the warriors that he's in the back of the cave. So here's Saul doing his thing, and here's David. We don't know how far back. But they're hiding in the cave, and that's the men he's with. So I want you to bring it back to the moment. I want you to think about this. He's probably somewhere around 25, maybe a little bit north of. This is a pretty ambitious time in a young man's life. He's been told he's going to be king. That'll add ambition to ambition. And he's surrounded by a group of fighters that they're ready. Swords in hand, spears at the go. This is a group of men ready to say, Saul's day is the last today. They're ready to take him off the throne and put David on the throne. So imagine the moment of conflict this has to create. I'm assuming he's a human being, that there's some conflict he's going to feel in this moment where he's going to go, man, God told me this is supposed to be mine. This guy's trying to take my life. He's at his most vulnerable. I'm currently at my most powerful. This is the moment. do I take his life? Do I not? Like, what do I do in this moment? And if he doesn't feel conflict yet, I guarantee he did in what happens next. Verse 4. The men, so these are the swords for teeth guys. The men said, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands for you to deal with as you wish. And then David crept up, unnoticed, and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. So if you look back over the story, basically chapter 16 is where David is told that he's going to be the next king. Now we're in chapter 24. And over the course of those 7 chapters, there has been a lot to happen to suggest that perhaps God is not being faithful to his word. There has been a lot to happen that, frankly, has invited David to misinterpret that God is a liar, that God is not faithful, that God is not a promise keeper, that God is not for him, so much so that it would lend to him possibly misinterpreting this very moment. And the misinterpretation would be, this is my moment, right? I've been hunted, this guy wants to kill me, I've done nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, he's in the spot that God told me I'm supposed to get, so the wrong interpretation should be, today's my day. Saul's not gonna walk out of this cave alive. And we know that that's some people's interpretation because it's what his men say. Did you catch it when his men said, here's what's happening right now? They looked at him and they said, this is the day the Lord spoke of when he said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands. The Hebrew phrase there being used literally can be translated as, today the Lord is saying. So this is what's happening. His men are coming up to him. They're like, David, I got a word from God. Like, the Lord is speaking right now. I got a word for you. Here's what God's saying about this moment. Here's what he wants you to do. You ever feel like there's just some people in life that love to tell you what God is speaking and saying? Like they just think they've got the ear to God and they always know, and they're gonna tell you what God's saying. When I was in college and I was interested in my wife, at the time, not my wife, I was like, I want her to be my wife. I had a good buddy named Jason who told me that it was not God's desire for me to marry her. Come to find out later on that Jason's desire was to marry her. I'm like, there's always the people in life that think they're speaking for God and want to tell you what to do. Can I just remind some of you of something that you probably already know, but sometimes we forget? Everybody who speaks on the behalf of God is not speaking on the behalf of God. Everybody who tells you what God wants you to do is not telling you what God wants you to do. And yet sometimes we have this desire to so much want to know what God wants us to do that we'll listen to any voice try to tell us. That's why in the moments of conflict, these moments of crossroad, of this internal conflict where our situations are not agreeing with the promises of God, you have got to be so crucial with what voices you listen to and which ones you ignore. And the ones that you have to ignore, they're not usually malicious. Often they're people that actually love you and care about you and want what's best for you. I have some people in the last couple of years of my life that have tried to say things to me that love me, that I love, that they were trying to speak on God's behalf, and they were not. If I would have listened, I would have gone the wrong directions. So you've got to be critical at the times of crossroad to know what voice will I listen to and what voice won't I listen to. Because initially David starts to listen to the wrong voices. It was at the influence of his men saying, hey, this is what God's telling you to do, that David decides to sneak up. Right? The only reason he snuck up to Saul and ninja'd his way through that cave, grabbed the cloak and cut off a corner of it, is because he was entertaining the idea that his men might be right, that this might be what God is saying. And yet what happens very quickly is David kind of steps back from the situation, looks at it and realizes, I'm at the risk right now of misinterpreting this moment and believing God's something wrong about God and then heading in the wrong direction as a result of it. You go, well, how do you know all that? Well, because I read the verses. They'll tell you the same thing. Verse 5, afterward, David was conscience-stricken for having cut off a corner of the robe. And so he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do such a thing to my master, the Lord's anointed. When he says the Lord's anointed, just like he was anointed to be the next king, there was a time when Saul was anointed. So what David is acknowledging is that Saul's not here of his own will. He did originally get here because God wanted him here, just like he wants me to be the next guy. So he's acknowledging that. He's acknowledging that if this is God's anointed, then it's God's to deal with, not mine. And he goes on, so I should not do such a thing or lay my hand on him, for he is the anointed of the Lord. And with these words, David sharply rebuked his men. and did not allow them to attack Saul. And Saul left the cave and went on his way. But then David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, "My lord the king." And when Saul looked behind him, David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. And he said to Saul, "Why do you listen to the men who say David is bent on harming you?" Saul's doing the same thing that David was just at risk at doing, listening to the wrong voice in his ear and choosing the wrong direction as a result. "This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. And I said, I will not lay my hand, not on my Lord, because he is the Lord's anointed. See, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but did not kill you. See that there is nothing in my hand to indicate that I am guilty of wrongdoing or rebellion. I have not wronged you, but you are hunting me down to take my life. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord avenge the wrongs that you have done to me. But my hand will not touch you. As the old saying goes, from evildoers come evil deeds, so my hand will not touch you." There have definitely been moments in the last number of years that you could look to in the life of David to indicate that God is with him and being faithful. I think you can also make a great argument that when an army of 3,000 people are seeking your death and your head on a platter, that there are more moments that would seem to lend to God being unfaithful. That there are more moments that he could have misinterpreted as God abandoning him, breaking his word, or breaking his promise. And yet in this moment, what he chooses to do when his situation is screaming at him, take matters into your own hands, is he puts matters back into the hands of the Lord, and he trusts. I think sometimes one of the most spiritually pure and powerful things that we can do in life is when we find ourselves at a moment like this, where our experiences, where our own mind, where voices around us are screaming at us that God is a liar, does not care, and has abandoned us, is to choose to trust Jesus in that moment. I think it's one of the bravest things that we can do is to disagree with our experiences and circumstances. And instead of trying to take matters into our own hands, like David could have, we take matters and we place them into the hands of Jesus. And I think at any given moment in my life when I've been at a kind of crossroads like this, where I've had this internal conflict, where my circumstances have disagreed with what I believe about God, that's ultimately what it is. It's an invitation in that moment to make a decision where you try to take matters into your hands or put matters into his hands. And I think there's an endless list of things that could describe and define what it looks like to be at one of these moments. But here's a couple that I came up with for example. I think there are moments of conflict that could look like this: doubting that God truly loves you because of something in life that's deeply hurt you. Or maybe trusting conflict to trusting God's plans for your life because everything in your life seems to be actually falling apart. Maybe a moment of conflict in obeying something that he has asked you to step into because of the temptation to go a different direction. Or maybe it's the conflict of letting new people love you because of how old people have hurt you. Or maybe it's the conflict of even being involved here at Kensington because of old church hurt. Maybe it's a conflict of waiting on God to open up an opportunity for you that other people are telling you just go make happen. Maybe it's a conflict of a passion you have pointing you one way in life, but your parents trying to point you another. Or maybe it's a conflict of really believing that as you live out the Christian gospel, that it can make a difference in this world, because as you look at the world, all you see is the broken ways that men and women hurt men and women. And so in those moments, what we can either do is we could take matters into our own hand or put them in his hands. And taking matters into our own hands can look like a lot of things given those lists. It can look like choosing to withdraw, shut down, do what somebody else thinks you should do, choose sin over obedience, choose the path of cynicism in life. It can look like a lot of different ways where we choose to say, no, I'm gonna take matters into my own hands. But these are the moments of internal conflict where the invitation is, go ahead, you can draw your sword, you can take matters into your own hands, or you can take matters and you can put them in God's hands and trust him. Because sometimes in life, this is what I've learned, and I know many of you have as well, is that the very places that attempt to tell us that God is a liar and unfaithful are the places that God, in fact, proves to us that he is faithful. That's why if you look at the life of David, one of the things that's fascinating, David also authored the book of Psalms. It's the largest book in the Bible. A number of those Psalms were written while he was on the run for his life. Matter of fact, on your screen, I would encourage you to look these up. 7, 27, 31, 34, and 52. These are specifically Psalms that while David is running and fleeing for his life, he wrote these. Like these are not, hear this, these are not Psalms, these are not parts of the Bible that David was in a nice, comfy, lazy boy. He had his Mac computer in front of him, his fall latte on the right, and he's just like, let me write nice, pleasant ideas about God that aren't really true to life. These were penned in the backs of caves. They were penned in fields. They were penned with sweat dripping down after he'd been on the run. Like, if you want to know what a man after God's own heart concludes to be true about God, what he agrees to in the pit of his soul when his circumstance says otherwise, read those. I want to take you to Psalms 27, though. I want you to see just a few of the things that David concludes. Again, this being written while he's on the run. Psalms 27, verse 1. The Lord is my light. The Lord is my salvation. And so whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Again, this is a guy that's got a lot of people to be afraid of. There's 3,000 men hunting him down that want to deliver his head on a platter to the king. And yet what he writes in this moment is, who do I have to be afraid of? Whom shall I fear? Why? Because the Lord is my light and my salvation. Verse 2, when the wicked advance against me to devour me, it is my enemies and my foes who will stumble and fall. Though an army besiege me, my heart will not fear. Though war break out against me, even then I will be confident. Listen, I know you know this, but your circumstances in life will almost always try to lie to you. David's circumstances would have told him, Saul will win, you will not. God is not faithful because he made a promise and you're hiding in the back of a cave. His circumstances would lie to him. What he told his circumstances instead is, no, my God is faithful. He is my light. He is my salvation, and in him will I trust. He disagreed with his circumstances. You know, one of the ways that the Bible describes Satan, the enemy of God, is he is the deceiver. He is a liar. And so do you think he doesn't have the ability to step into your specific circumstances and with his foul voice and breath try to twist them and use them to lie to you about who God is? He absolutely does. Here's one of the things that I think David concluded in that moment as he wrote those words that is important for us to conclude when we're at a moment of crossroads. It's on your screen, is that the Lord chooses what's true, not your circumstances. Often in life, your circumstances will disagree with God. They will tell you something untrue about who he is, untrue about how he sees you, untrue about who you are. Your circumstances are not the truth. Jesus is the truth. And I think the only way that David could sit here and write that I have no fear when he's being hunted down by 3,000 men is that he believed this. My circumstances don't determine my truth. The Lord determines my truth. But he goes on and he says this in verse 4. So one thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I ask. Say the word only. It's important. This only do I ask, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. For in the day of trouble, he will keep me safe in his dwelling, and he will hide me in the shelter of his sacred tent and set me on a high rock. I would imagine when you're being hunted down to be killed by an entire army, that's going to generate all kinds of prayer requests, all kinds of needs. Like picture David for a minute. He's in a small group, okay? He attends Kensington. He's in a small group. If you got a small group tonight, he's with your group. And there's prayer time. Hey, anybody got any prayer requests? And David's in your group. Like, what's he asking for prayer for? What would you ask for prayer for? Let's suppose you've got a crazy neighbor. And you park and you're a little bit in their driveway, and tomorrow they come out and they're like, all right, that's it, final straw. I don't like you as a neighbor. You parked in front of my driveway. Next time I see you, I'm killing you. And then you go to small group the next night. Like, what are you asking for prayer? That your crazy neighbor doesn't kill you, probably, right? Or you're going to call 911, or like there's all kinds of very specific things that are going to come out of a threat like that. Here's what's amazing to me. I want you to see it again. I'm going to go back to it. Here's what David said, Psalms 27. He said, one thing I ask from the Lord, and this only do I seek. So, okay, David, you're being hunted. What do you ask? What's the one thing you seek? And this is what he asks for, that I would see the beauty of the Lord and I would dwell in his presence. I read this last week, and there was just a moment of conviction that I feel like God brought me to. I have been in a lot of places in the last couple of years where I feel like I've been at moments of conflict, where I think the truths about God have been challenged by the reality of my circumstances. And you know where my prayers went? To the reality of my circumstances. Change this, do that, help me understand this, fix that. And here's what I was reminded of this last week. No. In this place, David, whose head is being sought for a platter, says, here's the only thing I'm asking for. I just want to see your beauty. And I want to be in your presence. Because I trust that if I'm there, if I live there, if I dwell there, then no matter what happens, it's good. And you're good. Here's number 2 truth that I think is so important for us to take hold of. Jesus is our greatest reward in this life and in the life after. That's what it means when the Bible says that God created all things. Here's what I believe. If that's true, that God created all things. He created every sunrise, every thunderstorm, every flower, every smile. If he created it all, then that means everything in creation is better experienced in relationship with him. And that apart from him, everything begins to fade with its joy, fade with its beauty. So think about it. Literally, it means food eaten in light of the fact that Jesus provided it is better. Vacation is better in light of the reality that God crafted the beauty of creation for you to enjoy. Intimacy in your marriage is better in light of the fact that God created this one flesh, soul bonding experience between a God-honoring biblical marriage. Everything in life is better in light of who Jesus is and that he made it. Even pain, while it may not be better, in light of Jesus being present to us, he becomes better. Everything is meant to be experienced in the light of the fact that he is the maker and the creator, that he is the greatest reward in all of creation. So can the greatest thing that God has to offer us be the greatest thing that we desire, which is him? David said, this is the only thing I'm asking. I know Saul and all that. I just want more of you. I want more of your beauty and more of your presence. Put me in that place. And then this is where he ends. Verse 13. I remain confident of this. Again, this is written while on the run. I will see the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. So he's literally saying, not like, I'm gonna see God's goodness in heaven one day. It's like, no, while I still draw breath in my lungs, here's what I'm confident of. I will see God's goodness. David, you're being hunted. People wanna kill you. It could happen at any moment, I know. But I'm confident that even while I still live, and even while I'm hunted, I will see the goodness of the Lord in the living. And so I wait for the Lord. Be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. David's circumstances would have told him to be confident in the fact that Saul was going to win. David's got 600 men, Saul has 3,000. David's men told him to be confident in the fact that God wanted him to take Saul's life in the cave. But here's what David's confidence was in. Not in how his situation would turn out, not in what his men interpreted the situation to be, but in the fact that God was so good that even while he was hunted, he would experience the goodness of God in the land of the living. The only way I can believe that somebody would conclude that while on the run for their life is that they ultimately believe this last one on the screen. No one will ever care for you like Jesus. No one will ever care for you like Jesus. So you will never, ever make the wrong decision to place your trust in him in any circumstance, because nobody will ever match his care for you. Which means no matter what the crossroad moment may be, no matter how painful, it means that the story you have to tell on the other side of it isn't how the circumstances took charge of you, and it doesn't even have to be how you take charge of the circumstances. It can be how you make the decision to put your life into the charge of Jesus' hands and trust him, no matter what your circumstances say, that he is indeed a faithful God who will take care of you like no one else will. Father, as we sing these next words, my prayer is that you would help somehow through your Holy Spirit to take them deeper into our souls and into our hearts of understanding than any human voice can do, that we would walk away with deeper confidence that in all moments, in all situations, it is true. Great is your faithfulness.
If my heart could tell a story, if my life would sing a song, if I have a testimony, if I have anything at all, no one ever cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. Let my children tell their children. Let this be their memory. That all my treasure was in heaven, and you were everything to me. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. I found my joy in you. I'm still in love. You're still enough for me. Jesus. Your faithful hand has held me all this way. And when I'm old and gray and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. As we move into this last song, we just wanted to share the heart behind what we're doing at the end here. This last song is called The Story I'll Tell. And really our heart is that when you understand and you choose day by day, moment by moment to trust Jesus and to grow deeper in your trust in Him, that it changes your story. That it becomes then a story where you can recount, not just for yourself, to encourage yourself, but to others, the faithfulness of God in your life. Because when you've seen Him do one thing that is faithful, you can remind yourself in those dark moments, God's been faithful, and if He did it then, He'll do it again. So I realize that this song is probably quite new for many of you, but if you know it, feel free to sing along. The hour is dark and it's hard to see what you are doing here in the ruins and where it will lead. Oh, but I know that down through the moment and see your hand on it and know you were here. And I'll testify of the battles you've won, how you were my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll testify of the seas that we've crossed, the waters you've parted, the waves that I've walked, singing, oh, my God did not fail. Oh, it's the story how you were my portion when there wasn't enough. And I'll sing the song of the seas that we've crossed, the waters we've parted, and the waves that I've walked, singing, oh, my God did not fail. Oh, it's the story I'll tell. Oh, I know it is well. Oh, it's the story I'll tell.
One of the things I would love you to take advantage of as you leave today is our team in the back that would pray with you, listen to you, just give you some care as you walk out the door if you need to process. Also, we'd just love to invite you to come down to our cafe space where we're going to do a walkthrough of the 2 areas that we're developing, including outside. There's going to be renderings and marked out in the parking lot so you can kind of get a sense of it as we just dream about what God wants us to continue to do to use this facility to reach people, love people, and connect people. If you're going to come and be a part of that, please just go get your kids out of K-Kids first. Otherwise, like an army, they will hunt me down if you leave them in there. So grab your kids, and we'd love to have you join us down in the cafe to hear more about our projects. Thanks for being with us. We'll see you next week.